So now we're going to hear from Maria, Owen's sister, and she's going to tell us about There Is a Mountain, which is a poetry anthology of Owen's. So, Maria, if you're ready, just take it away.
Yeah, hi, thanks, Rob. I guess I'll just quickly say thanks very much to all of you for coming together and organizing the night and giving your time and your talent and creativity. And it's always just really lovely. Like, we're always really heartened by it. And it's also really nice to see the scholars starting to join also, because this was, I guess, one of the reasons behind, it was kind of one of the motivations for keeping going with the tribute night and working with the scholarship, this idea of building a community of poets and creative people in Cork in Owen's memory and in Owen's name, something that we think we could be really proud of. So really nice to see it happening. So I was going to say a little bit about this book that we put out last year. So it was after, I guess, yeah. So, I mean, we say on the back of it here that very shortly before Owen passed away, the weekend before, he called out here to Carricktool to my parents' house and said to them that he kind of reached a point where he felt very content in himself and very sure about what he was going to be doing with his life and what he wanted to be doing. And it was going to be writing, putting out poetry, and trying to share that with the world. And he did do an awful lot of musicianship as well. And I remember having conversations with him where he was quite torn because he kind of felt he loved playing music. It was a way for him to connect with people. So many of his friends played music, but he just had this huge pull to just write. And he was sort of like, I feel like I need to just put all my energy into writing. So it was, a kind of a process for him to come to that point. Um, so then after he passed away, I just felt it was really important to try to save his writing, to try and save some of it and put out as much as we could. He'd already put out two small books, one when he was a teenager and one for the Quercus Scholarship in UCC. But he left just stacks and stacks of notebooks, so many notebooks. My father scanned them all into our computer at home. He also left loads of pen drives, hard drives. We luckily had his computer, his Google Drive, and I was kind of entrusted with that, which I know is a really kind of big responsibility in a lot of ways, because obviously people have very personal stuff in there. So I had the task, I guess, of going through it, and I would have had lots of conversations with Eoin about poetry and his motivations. And obviously, I knew him very, very well. So I had some idea about what he would have wanted to have out in the world. So, kind of over the course of the full 5 years, we passed away in 2015. We put this out last year. Pretty much every week, I would say, for years, I spent some bit of time going through it, making notes, thinking about it a lot. It did feel like this great gift in some ways, because you could really, for us especially, you can really hear his voice and like see him in some of the words. You can almost hear him say it or picture him making a gesture. So I kind of went as far as I could with it. And then I got in touch with two of his mentors, Leanne O'Sullivan and John McCarthy. So John McCarthy taught him in school, in secondary school. And then he met Leanne in UCC, where she was running writers' workshops. So they had both, himself and John had kind of kept up a relationship after Owen had left school, where Owen would email him work, and they had like a back and forth about poetry and what he was doing and all this kind of stuff. So knew him really well in terms of the, I guess, the poet side of him, and what he wanted to achieve literally in terms of literacy, or not literacy, but in terms of his literature. And then Leanne also knew him really well in terms of going to his class, or going to her classes and contributing to that. So they were massively helpful when I was kind of at this point where I'd gone through everything that he had written. I catalogued it all. I'd arranged it kind of chronologically. I'd taken out things that I thought were not finished, or maybe things that he might not have wanted to share. I had really good, helpful conversations with Leanne and John about that particular thing, in terms of who am I to decide what he'd like to share or what he'd not like to share. And they were very helpful in terms of talking about their experiences with things that they've put out. Um, Obviously, Eoin was writing in a really, a kind of time in everyone's life that's really tumultuous. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of high emotions and things like this. So anyway, I'm starting to feel like I'm waffling a bit. I probably should have written a script, but they were really helpful with kind of deciding the final poems. And I'm really proud of the book now that we put out. I'm really happy with, I remember sitting down with Leanne and kind of brainstorming stuff like the epigraph here, which was one, this Bing and Bong poem. I'll just hold it up there and maybe people can see it a little bit. But it's, if you have the book, will see it anyway. And just, it's laid out exactly the way he laid it out in his Google Drive. He has a little plus and a minus. So it's kind of positive and negative. So I thought that was really interesting how he visually did that. And then just a few lines in between, I only tapped into how high I could go by seeing the low and coming out. So this was written in 2013, and he writes the 1st of the 10th, 2013, near that midnight time. So kind of near this magical time going between one thing and another. And all of us who were close to Eoin, he went through a lot of turmoil and a lot of challenges, and you know, he went through a lot in his little, in his life. So I thought he kind of summed it up in this really lovely, really hopeful way. And that was a poem from 2013, which in the actual epilogue of the book, there's only one poem from that year because that was a particularly tough year. So I thought it was, this came out of the conversation with Leanne. What would we have as this epigraph? We were thinking of other poets, etc., etc., and this just kind of left out. So there was lots of little things like that where things just sort of fell into place, including this little quote at the back that I always really loved. It says, "If I could spend my days working at recording the laughter of the universe and my nights laughing at the universe," and then getting his own little signature in there as well was a really nice one. And this one as well for me is just classic Eoin. Like his work of reading and writing was very serious work for him. But then at the same time, he was like the best crack, so much fun. And this idea of spending his nights laughing at the universe, like he had this real sense of the kind of absurdity of it all. And um, yeah, I just really feel him in that quote as well. So yeah, really proud of the book, really proud of what you're doing and with the scholarship and the tribute night. And yeah, it's available for sale on the website. All of the proceeds go to the scholarship. Um, and that's it for me. Just really happy to have been able to do this thing for him with a lot of support from friends and family. Yeah.